Why did King Charles travel to Canada to personally deliver the official speech to the throne for the first time in almost 50 years? Because the globalist elite is in full panic mode over Trump's resurgent American republic. Many people think Charles' visit to Canada is just a diplomatic routine or a ceremonial function. But the fact that this hasn't happened in this way in 5 decades tells you something, that you are witnessing a fundamental battle between two worldviews. And shockingly, some of Trump's own allies are unknowingly fighting for the wrong side. This is Susan Kokinda, and I've been engaged in this political war for over 5 decades. And that frontline experience is one of the reasons I was recently elected as Coalition's vice chair of the Michigan Republican Party. In this midweek update, we're first going to dissect King Charles' agenda in Canada. Then we'll look at the weekend speeches of President Trump, Vice President Vance, and Defense Secretary Hegseth, and how especially Hegseth's Memorial Day speech carried a powerful repudiation of everything the British Empire stands for. And then we're going to expose how an outdated imperial mindset, even among well-meaning patriots, threatens to derail President Trump's policies and our republic's return to its fundamental principles. So, start with Charles' visit to Canada, where he was invited to deliver the speech from the throne address that opens the Canadian Parliament by the newly ensconced Prime Minister Mark Carney, who holds the globalist distinction of having been head of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. That Carney would invite the king to come to Canada to give this address personally for the first time since a monarch has done that since 1977 should tell you that this is not ceremonial. The New York Times admitted the substance of this in a mostly truthful headline, which said King Charles visits Canada in a subtle rebuke to Trump. But if you read the New York Times coverage, you'll see just how unsubtle the king's recent activities have been. The Times says Charles hosted President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine after Zelensky's bitter exchange with Mr. Trump in the Oval Office. While the king, by custom, stays out of politics, his warm welcome of Mr. Zelensky reinforced Europe's embrace of the Ukrainian leader. And of course, the embrace of the Ukrainian leader means the embrace of a war that cannot be won by Ukraine, that has killed hundreds of thousands, has displaced millions, and still threatens World War III. While Charles did not directly address the conflict in his speech, he did use the globalist buzzwords of democracy, pluralism, and rule of law, and declared that Canada would be seeking to work with reliable allies and a coalition of nations that agree with its values and the free exchange of goods. That probably does not include Donald Trump's United States. But despite the praise of free trade, climate change, green energy, new alliances, and reliable allies, the King's speech also recognized a new reality. Canada has become the poster child of free trade, wokeness, and globalization. And it now finds itself in a position where it's going to have trouble functioning economically in Donald Trump's world. But the King's visit to Canada and some of the changes in the Canadian budget represent an effort by the King and Carney to outflank Donald Trump, but they really have no idea what they're up against. Because over Memorial Day weekend, Trump and his team delivered the most powerful repudiation of empire in generations. Look at the extraordinary speeches, all cut from the same cloth, which Trump, Vance, and Hegseth gave over this past Memorial Day weekend. The common theme was peace and the rejection of the failed strategic doctrines of the past decades. At Arlington Cemetery on Memorial Day, Secretary Pete Hegseth, whose speech carries special significance because he is a soldier's soldier, said of our fallen, "The duty we owe these men is peace." But it is these words from Hegseth which captured the essence of the true conflict facing mankind today, that of empire versus sovereign republics. Our defense secretary said, "Throughout time, civilizations have honored the powerful, the well-connected, and the well-born emperors and kings. They have built magnificent shrines to their own royal greatness. Yet in America, with our great experiment in self-government, it is fitting that the most honored and closely guarded tomb in the land is that of an anonymous soldier of an unknown rank. It is a uniquely American tradition that we honor anonymous sacrifice above worldly greatness. You might want to give a moment to think about the pomp and circumstance related to King Charles' visit to Canada and those words spoken to an audience of Gold Star families. Also make note, this is the first time, at least on record, that a president, a vice president, a secretary of defense, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs have together commemorated this solemn day. Earlier over the Memorial Day weekend, President Trump and J.D. Vance addressed the graduating classes of our military academies and left no doubt that the United States is no longer the instrument of the empire's policies of perpetual war. At West Point, President Trump said, "The job of the U.S. Armed Forces is not to host grand shows to transform foreign cultures or spread democracy to everybody around the world at the point of a gun. The military's job is to dominate any foe and annihilate any threat to America. As president, I am laser focused on our core national interests. My preference will always be to make peace and seek partnership, even with countries where our differences may be profound." And in Annapolis, J.D. Vance was even more explicit. Now, I want to be clear that the Trump administration has reversed course. What we are seeing from President Trump is a generational shift in policy with profound implications for the job that each and every one of you will be asked to do. Now, following the collapse of the Soviet Union, our policymakers assumed that American primacy on the world stage was guaranteed. They believed that it would converge toward a uniform set of bland, secular, universal ideas, regardless of culture or country. And those that didn't want to converge, well, our policymakers would make it their goal to force them by any means necessary. And that, of course, is the policy which the American people decisively rejected on November 5th of last year. But false narratives also impede Trump's domestic economic agenda. And that's where Trump is running into trouble with the big, beautiful bill, which is the legislative kickoff for his economic revolution. And the trouble isn't just coming from his political adversaries. It's coming from some of his closest allies who are infected with the libertarian strain of British philosophical liberalism. Now, Donald Trump has used his executive powers, especially the executive orders, to unleash a shock front of policies which are aimed at unleashing the productive power of the United States in energy, manufacturing, advanced technologies, labor force education, and more. In recent weeks, this includes his announcement of the Golden Dome Strategic Defense Program, which, along with initiatives in nuclear, fusion power, and space, are huge science drivers. These bold policies must be understood and championed. This is precisely why Promethean Action exists. And I urge you to visit our website right now and check out our toolkit. Because we have to back up the president. Executive orders have a limit. And to make this leap into a golden age permanent, these policies have to be legislated with tax policies, which are in the big, beautiful bill. And there are policies in there that involve spending money and increasing the deficit until we can build and produce our way out of the disaster of the last 60 years. Now, look at Elon Musk. He's just filmed an interview with CBS, which will be aired next Sunday. In pre-release excerpts, Musk is quoted saying that the big, beautiful bill is undercutting Doge's efforts. Now, it's true. Doge has found billions and billions of dollars of fraud and abuse, which should be cut from the government. But why is he pushing back against the president? Well, this is what I call a philosophical bipolar problem. Look at how Elon Musk runs SpaceX. He's created the premier rockets in the world, including the Super Heavy booster. And he hasn't done this by cutting budgets. He builds rockets which cost a boatload, and then they blow up, and then he builds more. The super heavy booster isn't turning a monetary profit right now, but it is creating something more valuable, understanding how the universe works. So Elon Musk has these two sides to him. He has the libertarian side, and he has the scientific and technological genius side, who will take us into the solar system. Unfortunately, most of the libertarians and budget cutters in Congress, like Senator Rand Paul, don't have the scientific genius side. And Trump's big, beautiful bill faces a daunting challenge in the Senate. So, where does this libertarian infection come from? It's one arm of British liberal economics, which says that markets, i.e., money, rule. This is not the American system, which recognizes that government has a role to play in fostering, but not hindering, the physical growth of our economy through advances in science and technology. Charles and Prime Minister Mark Carney in Canada yesterday, defending globalization and free trade with the clear intent to stop Donald Trump's policies. And then think about American patriots, including maybe some of you, whose actions could produce the same result, stopping President Trump's policies. We have a very big job here at Promethean Action. We have to bring patriots up to speed with what President Trump is actually doing and give them the grounding to combat these imperial infections. And we have to do that now, because the fight for 2026 is already on. If Congress sabotages Trump's efforts, it's going to make the midterm elections very difficult, and we all know we can't lose the House or the Senate. So you've probably already recognized that we are pretty unique in leading this fight through broadcasts like this and on the ground through our direct intervention into the political process. We need your help to do much, much more. Right now, we're 1/3 of the way to our goal of having 1,000 sustaining members, donating $10 a month. I think it's possible that we can find 1,000 people across the globe to donate $10 a month that will allow us to expand. I hope you're one of them. Please go to our website. Thanks for listening.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.